always in the shadows, isn't he?
Always behind
Which
the scenes.
reminds me of a story. When I first joined the lobby in 2010, it was just before the 2010 general election, and coalition. And after the result was announced, there was a lot of negotiations going on as to who was going to team up with who, whether it's the Lib Dems and Labour or Tories and Lib Dems, as it ended up. And Mandy was a key figure in all of that. So I remember chasing him around Parliament one day, trying to get the scoop on what was going to happen. And he very politely told me to F off. Hello, this is the Division Bell, and I'm Martyn Brown, the new political editor of the Daily Express.
And I'm Mikey Smith. I'm the deputy political editor of the Sunday Mirror.
So, Mikey, you've just come back from America, haven't you, covering the US election?
Yes. Can you tell from how tired I look?
I can hear it in your voice, but you're looking mighty fine today.
Well, we'll probably talk about that a bit later, but it was very much like having a front row seat for the end of the world.
Fantastic. Look forward to hearing about it. So we're going to talk about assisted dying first of all today. The Express has done a online poll. Should assisted dying for the terminally ill adults be legalised in England and Wales? And the results were that 54% of people said yes, it should be legalised, and 46% of people said no.
And among Mirror readers, same question, 70% said yes and 30% said no. So more of our lot said yes.
That's interesting. We're running, in the Daily Express, we're running a campaign on this, pushing for assisted dying to be legalised, pushing for a debate in Parliament, which there's going to be a vote on November the 29th. Yeah. It was looking like it possibly could go through, but now not so much. Tell us what's been happening in the last few days.
So despite sort of originally the advice being that cabinet members should sort of remain neutral on it, or at least publicly not come out really on either side, a number have, most loudly, Wes Streeting, who has been who has raised a number of concerns. In the last 24 hours, it has been sort of the cost that has been his chief concern, which he was saying that he was concerned that the cost of implementing a assisted dying with all the safeguards and systems that would need to be set up might take money away from other parts of the NHS. I think it's interesting that as the member of the cabinet who is going to be in charge, potentially, if it goes through, of administering this, that he has chosen to come out so strongly against it.
I'd say it's outrageous, isn't it? He's clearly pushing his own personal agenda on this, and he's influencing those MPs who were perhaps wavering. And now they seem to be falling in line against it.
I think you're probably right. I think on one side, on the Labour side, there are people sort of falling in behind him. On the Tory side, from what I'm gathering, people are concerned that there's not enough time being put aside to debate it, because there's only, 5 hours?
5 hours, yeah. It was raised, Alex Shelbrooke, Tory MP, raised it in PMQs yesterday. And Keir Starmer said there is sufficient time to debate this. Alex Shelbrooke was pushing for it to be up to 16 to 18 hours of parliamentary debate time. Starmer's saying there is enough time, but then when we were speaking to his spokesman after PMQs yesterday, they were saying, well, Prime Minister, it's up to parliamentary authorities to set the timetable. Now, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is up to them, but I mean, it is government time. So, I think it's worth remembering that the 5 hours is just, and we'll get a bit technical here, but that's just for the second reading debate. So that's
Yeah.
when MPs are debating it in the House of Commons chamber. On top of that, there will be committee stages, right? There will be there will be a lot of discussion of the intricacies of the bill and the safeguards that are being put into it, which happen in a different part of Parliament that isn't as heavily televised, and you can get to it on Parliament's website, but it's harder to see. But yeah, it's not. MPs will have longer than 5 hours to talk about it. It's just that that won't be in prime time, really.
And it's a very complex piece of legislation to push through if it does go through, and the challenges of it of implementing it are widespread as well. So there is going to be plenty more on this, even if MPs vote against it on the 29th.
So while we're talking about it, the overall between the two polls for the Express and the Mirror, overall it was 65% in favour and 35% opposed, which is interesting, especially if it's going to end up not going through. The impression I get, though, is that the objections to it are not necessarily sort of overwhelmingly sort of ethical objections. There, some of them are obviously ethical objections, but I think the majority of people I've spoken to who are against it are for practical reasons.
Yeah,
they don't trust the system to manage it properly and safely.
And that's one of Kemi Badenoch's arguments, that she doesn't think the system can cope with it.
It's a fair argument.
Mm-hmm. So, Mikey, back from America.
Yes.
I can't wait to hear all about it. Tell us, what was it like?
So I, as we said before, have just come back from 2 weeks in the States, where I was travelling around a little bit in the run-up to the election. I went to lots of Donald Trump rallies. I went to a couple of Kamala Harris rallies.
Whereabouts?
So I went to Las Vegas, managed to get the company to pay for a trip to Las Vegas, so that was pretty good.
Survived.
I didn't go to a single casino. I'd just like to put that on record.
I'd love to have seen those expenses claims.
Listen, I almost the entire time I spent in Las Vegas, I was at rallies. I went to 2 rallies in the same day because both of them were in town were in Vegas on the same day. I got a taxi from one to the other, and it was quite the contrast because the Trump rally was obviously very raucous. And full of people in costume, basically. This was just after the whole thing about garbage. So you had the guy at the comedian at the Madison Square Garden rally saying that Puerto Rico was a floating pile of garbage, and then you had the next day Joe Biden saying in a Zoom call that the only garbage he sees is Trump supporters. And so people at these rallies started turning up wearing high-vis vests as if they were bin men. And some of them just like cut holes in bin bags and started wearing them as people turn up to these things in fancy dress. It was incredible. Partially, I think that was because it was also Halloween, the particular day. So there were people dressed up as Trump. And it was the usual fare from Trump, which I think we sort of get a bit desensitized to, but when you're in the room seeing him say that he's going to immediately deport 20 million people and send the army after them, when he's sort of painting all migrants to be murderous gang members, and you have 10,000 people screaming, "Yeah, go Trump," it's quite arresting to see it in person.
Was there any sense of what was to come, that he would win the election? It was really hard to gauge over here.
Yeah.
It was neck and neck.
Yeah.
Depending on what you read.
So I'm never I can never claim to have predicted this election because nobody did. The one thing I would say is that what I kept trying to tell people was the polls being close doesn't mean the result will be close. All the polls being close means is that it was unpredictable. So if you looked at all of the 7 swing states, they were all within the margin of error. They were all sort of 50-50 across the board. And this is what ended up happening. either candidate could have taken them.
And he won them all.
Yeah. And so it wasn't close in the end. I wasn't surprised. I was at Kamala Harris's election night watch party on election night.
Bit of a damp squib, that.
Yeah, let me tell you, there was a lot of watching going on, not a lot of partying going on. It was pretty bleak. There were. It was clear at about 11:30 that it was not going her way. She was not winning where she needed to win, and in the places where she was winning, she wasn't winning by enough. So even though at that point they hadn't called any of the swing states, we knew which way it was going. And so everyone just got very, very downcast very quickly. And then about 1 a.m, someone came out on stage in this huge, it was at Howard University, it's like a huge outdoor space with thousands of people there, and this guy just comes out on the stage where she was supposed to make her victory speech if she won, and said she's not coming out tonight.
And everyone went home.
And a handful of them came back the next day, including me, to see a concession speech, which was what it had to be. It was, all is not lost. We'll win eventually. Lost the battle, win the war, sort of thing. I think that was what some people needed to hear. I think some people were upset about that speech because she spent quite a lot of the campaign saying fairly apocalyptic things about what would happen if Donald Trump wins, and then she seemed like she was coming out on stage and saying, it's going to be all right. And people were like, but you just spent the last 6 weeks telling us it's really not going to be all right. I'm not sure it's going to be all right. There has been there was a sort of a rule of thumb in the last Trump presidency that you take him seriously but not literally. I think that was an error because he tends to actually do the things he jokes about.
Well, I mean, the result sent shockwaves around the world, and it, despite what Keir Starmer says, it's a major headache for him. I think Trump being in the White House. And the shockwaves have continued this week with Trump appointing quite a lot of his government senior positions. Elon Musk, the world's richest man, coming in. Matt Gaetz coming in as Attorney General, pretty firebrand Trumpian figure, and Tulsi Gabbard as well. The list goes on.
I mean, Matt Gaetz is a really interesting one because he's a proper, diehard Trump guy, and he's very camera friendly, and he gives good. I've seen him speak a couple of times in person, and he's terrifying. The things he's willing to say on stage, but the interesting thing, and he didn't. I forget the names involved, but Trump didn't get the Senate leadership that he wanted. So he might still have a bit of trouble getting some people confirmed because his appointments have to be confirmed by the Senate before they're allowed to take office. However, there was a thing that I saw where someone was suggesting that Trump doesn't actually need to get an Attorney General confirmed. All he has to do is appoint a series of temporary ones, acting as attorneys general, and I think they can serve for something like 200 days.
I think Trump can do pretty much what he wants to do, can't he?
He's going to do whatever he wants. I think we should take him literally this time. He's made jokes recently about him. As he's done before. Maybe I'll just stay on. Maybe after 4 years, maybe I'll just, if you like me enough, I'll just stay on. Yeah. I think that's what he's going to try and do. And it's slightly scary.
And let's not forget, we got Pete Hegseth as the equivalent of Defence Secretary as well, the Fox News guy. And the government's got to work with these people. John Healey's got to work with him. David Lammy. Let's not forget what he said about the Trump regime in the past and about Trump himself, and then the dynamic between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump himself. And I just think it's going to be it's caused major headaches for the government just 4 months into their tenure, and Donald Trump is going to have a massive influence over the global politics, global defence, global security in the next 4 years. And so the government's got a lot of groundwork to do, a lot of catching up.
I think that's partially true. I think where the awkwardness, from my point of view, is going to come in is not now, but in 6 months' time. Because on election night, Starmer had to obviously straddle it quite carefully, and he had to put out a statement congratulating him, historic win, blah blah, and he had to do that because he's a world leader and has to congratulate the winner of an election. There is a risk that if Donald Trump does all the things that he says he's going to do, that is going to get old quite. Being. If he were to appear too craven or sycophantic at the early stages, it might cause some problems if if Starmer has to distance himself from Trump at a later stage because he's done something absolutely outrageous. At some point, I think someone's going to have to dust off the Hugh Grant from Love Actually routine, and so we're friends tell each other when they're not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a few months down the track, but I think that's probably going to happen.
And another key role in all this is who we have as our ambassador in Washington.
Yes.
I see the Prince of Darkness, Peter Mandelson, is the front runner to get the job, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. He's got a bit of a colourful back catalogue, shall we say?
So I had a story into the Sunday Mirror this week, which was I should point out I published a few hours before someone else published the story saying he was the front runner, but what I was told was that people in the States have been advising Donald Trump, even if the UK appoints Mandy as ambassador, not to accept his credentials. So when you're appointed as an ambassador, you have to go to the country, present your credentials, and they get accepted by the leader. It would be unusual for them not to be accepted. I would be surprised if Peter Mandelson's were accepted, or at least, if not like outright rejected, which would be a major diplomatic incident. They might just sit on it for a while and just not confirm it for ages until someone over here picks a different name. What people are, the people advising Trump, what they're concerned about is that Peter Mandelson obviously used to be an EU commissioner and takes a pension from the EU, 31 grand a year. And so there is some suggestion that as well as acting in the interests of the UK, he might be trying to promote the interests of the EU at the same time.
Wouldn't this be like his third, fourth comeback? He was kicked out of the Blair government twice. He came back again under Brown.
Yeah.
He's been, as you say, EU commissioner. So
he's been behind the scenes.
Yeah,
a little bit with
always in the shadows, isn't he?
Always behind
which
the
reminds me of a story. When I first joined the lobby in 2010, it was just before the 2010 general election, and coalition. And after the result was announced, there was a lot of negotiations going on as to who was going to team up with who, whether it's the Lib Dems and Labour or Tories and Lib Dems, as it ended up. And Mandy was a key figure in all of that. So I remember chasing him around Parliament one day, trying to get the scoop on what was going to happen. And he very politely told me to F off. But that was in the shadows under the subway under Parliament. So he likes to be in the shadows. But it'd be interesting to see whether he does get the job. I'm not sure. One man who would like the job, or some role anyway, is Nigel Farage, a friend of Donald Trump. And I mean, could he have a role?
Well, the other thing I was told was that he hasn't been offered a role by the Trump administration anyway, and if he was offered one, he would turn it down because he would tell them that he has far too much work to do in Clacton. That is the line, and that is what he's sticking to.
Keir Starmer was mocking Nigel Farage this week in PMQs for not spending much time in Parliament, being over in the US. But it's a bit rich for a man who's spent most of the last few months on foreign trips. I know some of them he has to go on, but
I mean, he is the Prime Minister.
He is the Prime Minister, I guess, but anyway, it was quite an amusing moment in PMQs yesterday.
It was very
but yeah, so Mandy if Mandy doesn't get it, then who are we thinking? Ed Miliband? Sorry, not Ed Miliband. David Miliband.
Yeah, I think David Miliband's a fairly safe bet. You know, people say he wants it, and he's obviously lived in the States for quite a long time. He's been head of. I was like, I'd never. It will never stop being funny that the charity he works for is called International Rescue.
Yes,
Thunderbirds. But yeah, no, I suspect that's probably where it'll end up going if they try Mandy and it doesn't work out. So, Martyn, what was your moment of the week?
A few things to choose from. We started the week with Armistice Day, quite powerful images of Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron in Paris. First time a British Prime Minister's been there since Churchill. And the two of them going around in the open-top vehicle. It was quite a powerful and sombre image. But I think my moment of the week has to be the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby's resignation. It's something that clearly doesn't happen very often. I'm amazed he clung on for so long, and it's all ended in disgrace.
Yeah.
How about you?
My moment of the week, you may be able to see by the bags under my eyes and the pale pallor of my skin. I was up quite late last night at a dinner that was in honour of the 20th anniversary of the Guido Fawkes website. If you're not familiar, Guido Fawkes is a scurrilous politics gossip blog which has been running for a very, very long time. And it was quite a well-attended and lively dinner. Boris Johnson was there, Liz Truss was there, Robert Jenrick was there, James Cleverly, Nigel Farage was there. The guest list was stellar and extremely right-wing, apart from me. So I was there, and there was you'll be able to read this by the time this podcast goes out. You'll be able to read this on the Mirror website. But there was a comedian who sang some, let's say, slightly off-colour satirical songs a few metres away from two former prime ministers, one of which suggested that Britain might be better if we let the Nazis win, because the country has now gone to the dogs. There were other verses of his songs which were poking fun at people with disabilities and eating disorders and mental health conditions, to the tune of "Knees Up, Mother Brown," which was quite something. And I think particularly I mean, there was raucous laughter, but people's eyes got a bit wider at the Nazi jokes, particularly I think coming a few days after Armistice Day, when both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss were putting wreaths at the cenotaph, and then they're sitting there listening to some funny jokes about the Nazis. There we go. And you can read all about that on the Mirror website.
I think you mentioned, though, that the comedian at the end said it was a joke.
He did say it was a joke, but he also acknowledged that it was, I think I'm quoting, a little close to the rubber, which by the looks on some people's faces, it certainly was.
And any of the politicians get up to any shenanigans last night?
I don't know about shenanigans. There were a lot of politicians there, and there was a lot of wine. James Cleverly was there. I think I mentioned Robert Jenrick was there. I've never been. I can't remember the last time I was in a room with so many people I'd written slightly unflattering stories about. Sean Bailey was there. The former, he's now a Tory peer. He was the Tories' candidate for Mayor of London, who we obviously did the story about a lockdown busting Christmas party in his office, which, as we understand it, led to him being investigated by the police. Yeah, he didn't talk to me a lot. Okay, thanks for listening. This has been the Division Bell. You can get involved with next week's show by looking at the poll, which we'll be doing on Twitter, X, whatever you'd like to call it, at Daily Mirror and at Daily Express. I've been Mikey Smith.
And I'm Martyn Brown.